Next. Oh, wow. All right, we've got the recording started. So now, any new faces in the Zoom? Trying to do a quick look around. I think everyone has been here. Oh, wait, no.
I haven't been to a Paketo working group meeting. Hi, everyone. I'm Simon Jones. I'm an engineering manager over here at VMware. So that's, I think, why Frankie and probably a lot of folks already recognize me. I've just started working a little bit more with the Paketo Buildpacks team here at VMware, having previously worked with a bunch of other teams, but most noticeably for you folks, probably the Cloud Native Buildpacks kind of core contribution squad. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks for joining us, Simon. All right, so with that, let's go on to the quick overview of outstanding project level RFCs. Share my screen. All right, so first, the project level RFCs. I know that a couple of these are on the agenda for later on in the meeting, so I won't necessarily touch on those now, but starting from the top, are there any like action items or asks for the folks in the working group about this triage party RFC?
I guess this is a new one that I wrote. I didn't put it on the agenda yet, but if you want to start to take a look at that, that'd be cool. Triage Party is basically a tool that gives you kind of an overview of, could give us an overview of all our Paketo repositories and issues and pull requests, and it's used by some other cloud native like projects as well. So check it out. I think it might be useful for the community and everyone, since we have quite a few repositories. And maybe I don't know how this presenting these works. I can do that at the next meeting. I kind of just finished it up.
Yeah, you totally could. Feel free to stick something in that future topic section if you want. You could do a little, walkthrough of what it looks like and things.
Sounds good.
So before then, you're just looking for asynchronous feedback?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. This next one I wrote and it's on the agenda, so I'll skip minimal builders. Then we've got the co-locate all Paketo RFCs for us. Is there anything you want to say now before we get into it in the main agenda?
Nope.
Cool. Okay, standardized log level configuration. Ryan, anything you need from the group on this?
I don't think so. It's Emily has gone ahead and approved it. After the last working group meeting, the one change I made was basically to just remove everything related to Warn from the RFC. And if we want to talk about the semantics of what a Warn log level means, we will write up a separate RFC. But after it got to the point where more than 50% of the RFC was outlining what it meant to be a Warn log level, I decided that that's not really the intent of the RFC at all. And so I just removed it. But it looks like it's completely approved. So I should be able to rename the file correctly so it matches our numbering scheme and merge.
Great. Okay. Sounds like just action from the steering committee on that. Cool. And then lastly, the semantic versioning RFC. I know Arjun, the original author, is not here. Does anyone know if things are needed on this one?
I know there are a number of outstanding comments on there. Emily, I think, made a pass. I saw a bunch of notifications fly by this morning. So I think there maybe are some further questions that need answers or resolutions in the RFC.
Great. All right. Yeah, I encourage folks to take a look at that one. There's a lot of healthy conversation happening there. And I think basically anyone who consumes Paketo Buildpacks has a stake in how that ends up shaking out. All right, with that, let's take a quick look at language family specific RFCs. Seems like we've just got this .NET one that is in a draft state. Is there anything that Tim or Andy you all need to move this one forward?
I guess we just need to reprioritize it. So
Yeah, we're gonna put it down for now. So yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. In that case, back over to our agenda. So the first RFC that's here on the agenda is this RFC for minimal builders, which I wrote. I guess like screen share it and give a brief spiel, and then I'm just looking for any like synchronous feedback about the idea that I can take action on. So the high level idea here, I might just read the summary because it's the summary. Paketo builders are our way of distributing Paketo build packs and stacks along with the CMB lifecycle. Currently, Paketo distributes the full base and tiny builders, which some of y'all may have used. And those include different sets of build packs and whose stacks have different mix-ins. While those builders are a simple way of packaging all the necessary components for a Paketo build, they often include more than a user actually needs. So in this RFC, we propose that Paketo should publish minimal versions of its 3 builders that will include the same build and run images as their standard counterparts, but will have no build packs and no orders in them. This will speed up builds by reducing the number of unnecessarily pulled layers without forcing Paketo users to maintain their own builders if they want to curate the build packs that are included in the build. So I'll leave it there in terms of explanation. Happy to field questions about this or just like get feedback about this idea at this point.
can you tell us a little bit more about like, so is it just we want them to it's like the primary motivation, like we want them not to have to pull so many layers? Is that the main thrust of this, or?
Yeah, so like selfishly, part of my motivation as somebody who like develops Paketo build packs frequently is that our process of running tests is often quite slow because when we start our integration test suites, we have to like pull a version of the builder. And then in our testing, we always add in the build pack that's actually under test. So we use 0 of the build packs and 0 of the orders included in the builder that we've just pulled. So it's basically a massive waste of time. But beyond that, my sense is that, oh, sorry about the street noise. My sense is that as Paketo users like get more acquainted with the ecosystem, that probably like the builders that we distribute will quickly have more things than are actually needed. That is sort of like an assumption or guess on my part. So if people have thoughts about that, or if that's counterfactual, I'd love to hear about it. But yeah, the idea here is rather than sort of invest a lot of energy in publishing lots and lots of different builders for specific users, a minimal one that then people can plug the build packs they want into. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Cool.
This might be kind of a dumb question around this. I guess how is this different than like if the pack CLI were to just support like a -- build image and run image flag inside of it, where I could just pass in whatever build packs I want?
I'm not familiar with if that's like something that's being developed in pack, so hard for me to speak to that as a specific feature, but given what you're describing at the high level, pretty similar. It's basically just like, let's use builders as a way of distributing build image, like a sort of reference to a run image and a version of the life cycle. Where maybe the only thing that's different is that it's still like a versioned and distributed image that has specific versions of those things together inside of it, as opposed to like patching them all together in an ad hoc way on the command line.
Got it. That makes sense. Yeah, I wasn't actually sure if there's like anything in flight in the CMB project around this. This is just kind of what I thought about. But regardless, I think there's merit to this. And beyond this, I've wondered if we kind of have our builders today one-to-one correlation with the stacks that we publish. And like, I've wondered if like full should actually just be the set of every single language family and just have a builder around, popular languages like Node and Java and stuff like that to minimize this a little further.
Yeah, so one of the alternatives, I guess, that's outlined in this RFC, which is they're not necessarily mutually exclusive, is sort of what you're describing, Kasha, like, or I guess I didn't actually include this alternative. It's like a comment hidden here, is these more like curated builders that cater to like a specific language family. And I guess one consideration there is as we publish those, we increase our maintenance overhead and maintaining all of them and like versioning them and stuff. And it's not super clear to me, I guess, like who's actually using the builders and for what. Because like if folks are quickly moving towards Kpack with Paketo builders or with Paketo Buildpacks, for example, then my understanding is that they're directly not relying on Paketo builders at that point, since Kpack has its own concept of a cluster builder. So that's sort of an open question I have, like how much we invest in publishing different kinds of builders.
Certainly worth investigating. It almost like a middle ground might be that we publish only one kind of like full builder that has everything in it, and it really is meant for like demos and samples and first time users to really just try out Paketo Buildpacks, and that's the expectation. But that for super users, folks who are more familiar with the platform, folks who are building their own builders, they're more likely to just pull like, the build pack free version of the builder and then just put in whatever build packs they want. The only comment I had on this one, I think like a long time ago, I remember having a very similar thought, mostly around the same selfish kind of need of improving the performance of the test suite. So I'm happy to see it in an RFC form at this point. The only thing I had a comment on was kind of the naming of things. I already think that builders today are pretty loosey-goosey with any sort of semantics to the names of things. Like what is the meaning of base versus the meaning of full? That's like pretty unclear in the actual name of things. And we're introducing another name that's also really unclear. Like what about it is minimal? Is it size minimal? Is it the number of layers that's minimal? I don't know. I propose some rather clunky alternatives like packless or something like that, but maybe some more thought on like the name of it might help to kind of illuminate a path forward there.
That totally makes sense. One other thing I'll leave as a tidbit, and people can maybe weigh in asynchronously on this, is thinking about if we were to have these builders, would we want them to live in their own separate repos, as with the 3 builders that we have, or would we want different builder tomls checked into the same repos? On the one hand, we could sort of have independent versioning. The versioning would be coupled, but maybe it would be like more clear how the one with and without build packs relate to each other. So I think Arjun made a comment on the RFC about that. So if folks have thoughts on that, they can comment there. Does anyone else have things that they want to say about this right this second? Otherwise, happy to move us along. Okay, well, thank you for the feedback so far, and check out the RFC if you want to say more things. And with that, let's see. RFC, co-locate all RFCs. Forrest, over to you. I'll stop sharing.
Absolutely. Let me grab this RFC real quick. Share my screen. So this is an RFC that Emily proposed about a month ago now. I reached out to her and asked if it would be okay if I picked this up. She said yes, so here we are. The basic gist of the RFC is currently we have a lot of RFCs. We've done a lot of documenting our sort of architecture design process. Those RFCs are spread out across not only this RFC's repo, but various RFC folders inside of individual repos where those RFCs would have pertained. So, you know, there's some in Go Build, there's some in the Go language family repo, they're everywhere. We started out doing this because we felt that it might make more sense to be able to put those RFCs right next to the code that they were directly affecting. But it has since sort of come to pass that it actually makes them very hard to keep track of and makes them hard to be discoverable. So I'm proposing that we move all of the RFCs that currently exist in all Paketo repos into the top level RFCs repo into a new structure. So yeah, let me run through that structure really quickly, and then I'll take some any synchronous feedback you have. So currently, if you have a look at the Paketo RFCs repo, there is just sort of a text folder that has all of the RFCs that have been merged by the steering committee. I am proposing that we keep that text folder, and anything that is a top level RFC still continues to go into that folder. However, we add a series of folders underneath that named after various project teams. And by that, I mean, there's currently a Go project team, a .NET project team, a tooling project team, all of the sort of various teams that we have. Give each of those teams a directory inside of the text directory, and then all of those directories would have subdirectories inside of them that would stand for each of the individual repositories that those teams are responsible for. I arrived at this sort of concept because I think it makes sense to continue to keep everything in text, and I think it in some ways kind of graphically shows the hierarchy in terms of the governance structure, where we have top levels and then we have sort of sub teams, and in those sub teams they have things that they can control, etc. I also thought it would be a relatively easy thing to integrate with the code owners idea. So one of the things that I struggled with the most was trying to figure out how we move all of these things into a repository that's ostensibly top level controlled by the steering committee, but we want individuals, but we don't want the steering committee to need to be involved for, Go RFCs or whatever it might be. So there's functionality in code owners to allow you to essentially assign certain subdirectories to individual code owners. So the example I have here is steering committee gets top level, but in text project team, everything that gets sort of PR'd and merged into there only needs approval by the project team maintainers. So with this, there's still that level of autonomy that individuals and maintainers for their particular language families or projects continue to have control over their RFCs while co-locating them all into one space. So with that, I guess I can just take some questions.
Two thoughts. The first one is, I would appreciate if the implementation outlined what is expected to be done with the existing sets of RFCs that are spread throughout the entire set of repositories. I think there's an implication in the RFC, but I don't think it's actually spelled out. I'd like to see it spelled out somewhere. And then the second one is, this RFC has considerably more impact on the maintainers of subteams than it does on the steering committee.
Mhm.
I could go in and say like, yes, approve this, and it has almost no impact on me as a steering committee member. And what I'd like to see instead is approvals from maintainer groups for the language families themselves. I think I'll add them as requests for review on this and see if we can get some folks to approve this first, considering this has way more impact on the sub-team maintainers than it does on the steering committee.
I think that both of those sound like a good idea. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I feel like maybe I missed something, but I feel like we decided to like like everything lives in text, and then we have like approved and not approved on like the the README document now or something like that. Is that still a thing? Like, what happens to these subcommittee sub ones when they're approved or not approved, I guess, in terms of tracking that?
So the way that the way that the structure follows now is it's text, and anything that has been accepted has been put into text.
Okay,
and
accepted
then-
is in text. I got it.
And then we've sort of broken it up into accepted and implemented. So things
Got it.
that are fully implemented, we do that. I guess maybe I should lay this out in the RFC. What I would imagine is you could have in each top level project directory this same sort of README with maybe particulars for the RFCs for that particular project group. And then you would have the same structure of accepts and implemented. Because you can do sub directory READMEs in GitHub.
Yeah. I guess it might be cool to potentially like separately add this RFC thing to the experiments we've been doing with like documentation on the like the sub module. What is it? The documentation, the website generator stuff, where
Mhm.
this would end up elsewhere. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's
maybe
cool.
maybe having a place on the website where you could see RFCs might be.
Yeah.
That's definitely. I think that's a fair thing for us to look at. I think it might be outside of this exact thing.
Thanks.
I have a quick question about this. Have you thought about how, I definitely think that this is a good idea from like an organization perspective, but as a way for users to discover RFCs, I know like on one hand, it's nice to be able to go to one place and see all the RFCs, but we had a discussion like a couple months ago about disabling issues on implementation build packs, which I kind of think is similar in that I think the concern was that if a user just goes to that repository and they can't like find issues or like file issues, it might be kind of difficult for them if like they can't just go to the repository of interest and see any issues, and they have to go somewhere else. And I'm wondering if we have the same concern with RFCs being kind of hidden away in a separate location, and how we could surface that in each of the build packs, if you see what I mean.
I think it's relatively reasonable for us to say something to the effect of, if you want to open up an RFC for, the behavior of a given language family, you're going to have to go here and go to this. I think that the benefit is that an individual coming into, or the benefit that I would like to imagine, whether or not it actually exists, is that an individual who is new to Paketo trying to find information about the languages that impact them will have one place to go to look, instead of having to understand how the build packs work in order to find all of the RFCs that are pertain to them. I am okay. I think I'll stop at that.
Yeah, that's super valid. I just wonder if there's a way that we can at least probably just link out or something, make sure that people can find RFCs if they need to, if they're used to the way we do things now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't know. Maybe I might also wonder how many people start by trying to open RFC as opposed to an issue. which as long as that avenue is still open, then I still feel like this is a relatively appropriate idea.
Cool.
On a similar note and kind of related to what Ryan said as well, I think it'd be useful to not necessarily remove the RFCs from where they currently are. Or like if we do that, at least have a redirect where those things used to live to say like, oh, were you looking for the RFC? Like here's a link to where they live now. And similarly, like linking in the readmes of all of the Buildpack repos to this like RFCs repo to make it easy to get to the central repo from wherever you may be.
I'm fine with the idea of having links to all of the sub repos inside of the readmes for a given whatever, you know, level of combination you want out of that. It feels maybe a bit redundant for us to have the readme of a given build pack inside of the RFC's repo for that same thing. It feels redundant. Is that what you were proposing? Maybe I misunderstood you.
I'm not really sure if I'm understanding what you said. I'm thinking so like specifically Go Build, to take a concrete example. That implementation build pack has an RFCs directory as far as I know.
Yeah.
That like contains actual content. If the implementation of this RFC means removing that file, then I think some file should be in that directory that says, hey, this thing moved. That's all. Which I think is like, there's a small number of these cases. And I think it would just be helpful if we're going to create like broken links, for example, for people to be able to like find their way to the correct thing.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about then we have like these shell directories living in repositories forever because we're scared of breaking a link in a blog that someone wrote 4 years ago. And you know, when someone comes to this in 5 years, someone's like, why the hell is this directory with 3 text files in here and a redirect link? Because we haven't done this thing since forever. I don't disagree with it now, but I guess I don't know that I know the end point of it either.
Links should never break on the internet.
Never. I think that I would like to discuss that more, maybe not right now, because I don't know that I necessarily have the best idea of what you're thinking about laid in front of me. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not entirely sure that this is semantically different than if I had opened up a PR that renamed a file that was like a Go file, right? Arguably, somebody could have referenced that in a blog post or in an issue. And now if they click on that link and someone is referencing the path that is this like main floating branch reference, that link is no longer going to work. Versus what the individual who made the link probably should have done is asked for the permalink that pointed at the RFC text, which would then continue to exist because the RFC's directory does continue to exist in the history at that point in time. I'm not sure it's our job to make sure that like a relative link like that just continues to work in perpetuity. Because we certainly don't do it for our code.
That's fair.
I think that there's definitely, we'll have to put something there that's like, hey, we've moved these RFCs. If you're a person who's trying to do that, you know, go here now. But I don't know that, or even just a formal process of, hey, if you want to open up an RFC to propose change to this, you know, go here and open this. But yeah, yeah.
Do you folks have other comments, questions, concerns about this co-locate RFC? I'll admit that I'm personally curious about the people on the call who have mostly like been RFC readers or discoverers of the Paketo project in the wild, because we're making a lot of guesses about what's useful, but probably other people know better.
And I generally was surprised when they weren't RFCs weren't all in the same place for the language stuff. I remember that when I first joined, but like meaning like that they were spread out around all the different repos.
Mostly this is the end result, I believe, a consolidation of a long-running experiment, which was originally we only had the RFC's repo for project-wide, like steering committee approval required RFCs. And then there was a conversation that happened quite a long time ago now at this point about maybe the individual subteams themselves would want to have RFCs about stuff. But we didn't know what the processes around that should be, and we didn't really want to define one. And so we left it up to the subteams to experiment. I think that's borne out to be like a positive thing that's happened. And so this makes sense as like a consolidation of that effort generally.
Like tangentially related, I am a little unclear if RFCs are required or optional for project for language family level changes. Like, is it kind of up to the maintainers to decide? Because I know we usually say let's write an RFC, but I'm not sure that we always do. Like, is there guidance around this? Like,
I think it's always been a maintainer specific, like up to their discretion. I don't think I've ever seen an RFC that outlines anything that's like a project-wide requirement for language level RFCs. It's always been at the maintainer's discretion.
So it just continue to be optional or like up to the discretion of the maintainers, like just live it somewhere else.
All right, Forrest, is there anything else you need from the group on this?
Nope, asynchronous feedback is all I need now.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm once again disoriented in the agenda. Well, it seems like we've come to the end of the pre-written agenda items. We have a little bit of time remaining. So are there any late breaking topics that people want to raise for like 5 minutes or so?
Yeah, I have something. Kind of like a bigger topic-ish that's been coming up a little bit in the Buildpacks project. But kind of like historically, it feels like a lot of the changes in that project were kind of like handed down as specification to this team. And we're kind of starting to hit a point where we need ways to bubble up the learnings that this project has had so that other people can read it and figure out, oh, here are some best practices. Here's some docs, right? And so I'm probably going to be coming to these things just to try and get some consensus from y'all about how to go about doing this without making a ton of extra work for you.
Are there any meetings that any of us could attend that would help speed up the transfer of that knowledge?
So yeah, there's like an RFC that just went through around kind of like coming up with best practices, and really all of those are essentially derived from this team, right? This was something that was opened by someone externally, but basically the problem is people want to know how to write their own build packs. The place they're looking is this project, right? You have by far the most well thought out patterns. Like, how can we get these in a place that's accessible from the top down, right? So from the root project. I can throw a link here about when that is, but I don't want to like ask you all to like come to a bunch of extra meetings, since that is definitely a little bit annoying.
And you opened a discussion thread about this topic, is that right?
I have
Or
not.
somebody did? I feel like I remember, and I'm looking back on my notifications, somebody opening what looked like a discussion thread to like propose these best practices, and there was like an outline.
Yeah. So here is the RFC that just went through this week around what this will look like. It's like under this breakup of the Buildpacks project called the Learning Team. And they have like a sync on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. EST. But I think this is kind of like the next thing to figure out about how Buildpacks can effectively take information and pull it from individual projects up and display it somewhere. The next thing is going to be like, how do we pull some of the docs you have, right? You've done a really good job writing docs for your Buildpacks. It would be nice if we had a project level way of being like, okay, here's how you can look at this. And it'd be great if people first saw docs that looked like yours. So when they're writing their own, we have some standardization, right?
I mean, what comes to mind is when I'm going to Buildpacks.io, I don't see a lot of like y'all sending like a list of, like, I don't see any links to Paketo outside of the registry. And I don't see any like, oh, here are some implementation projects. Is that just because we're like the only one and we want to be neutral, or like,
Yeah,
that
so I
seems
think
like
this,
an easy thing to start with, is like some reference stuff on the site that links out.
yeah, 100%. I think historically it's difficult for us to have like a VMware project that's open source that then just points to other projects that are populated by mostly like VMware employees. So keeping it like agnostic, right, has been a goal. I think that the registry is like the place where we need to like pull most of this stuff up, right? So that anyone can push up a build pack, can like have docs that go with it, etc.
Sure, I guess you're asking for work in one direction though, right? Like, sorry if I'm sure I assume you're part of VMware because most people on here are, but if not,
yeah.
Like, yeah, I guess it seems like what is Paketo's incentive to do this? Like a bunch of work on the Paketo Buildpacks.io site when there's no reciprocity. Like, not to be snarky about it, but
What do you mean reciprocity?
like there's no links to anything Paketo on your site, and now you're asking for a bunch of content that was developed as part of the Paketo stuff. Like, there's no like kind of links from Buildpack.io to any Paketo stuff while you're asking for a bunch of work in the other direction, right?
I mean, sure, like, I guess so. If that's like how you want to paint this as like two completely separate projects. And but
No, I definitely don't. I'm
think
just
there's,
saying like that's what it appears like from like going to the various, that like Paketo is separate and then Buildpacks is separate.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that in the past, there was an idea that this was going to allow people to come up with their own patterns, right?
Mhm.
And now we're at a place where it's like, okay, there are already some well-established ones. If we want to make this like project a success, if we want to make Buildpacks a success, we have to try and have a way to bubble these back up. Whatever that may be. Maybe that's not through this additional docs, and there are additional ideas or better ways that you have about doing this. This is one way we could do that, right?
Got it.
So am I understanding correctly that you coming today was mostly to sort of like let us know that this is going on and begin this conversation, but there'll be like further action and like working group subsequently?
Yeah, exactly. I think that, again, historically, it's been maybe the wrong direction of an RFC goes through and then this is how everything's going to be, fit the mold, versus maybe having all of you as Buildpack authors have more say in that process. So
Cool. Well, thanks for coming by from upstream. Does anyone else have like subsequent questions for Dan while he's here?
Yeah. What is nirvana for this? Like, what is like at the end, what is the perfect state for we've succeeded in whatever knowledge transfer, keeping up to dateness thing?
yeah. So I would say that the end goal is that when someone grabs a builder, they can easily figure out what the build packs are in the builder, more easily figure out how the build packs communicate if they want to drag and drop their own, right? And how they would extend a builder with their own build packs, right? So I think that's the nirvana state. It's more of like enabling this onboarding process where people actually have an idea about what's going on, because we're giving them this magical black box that builds their app into an image. Any visibility into that is a huge plus, particularly people already have that kind of with Docker. So
I guess I think I have a similar question to Andy, and but maybe in more of sort of a maybe in a different light. So say that someone on, you know, a Paketo team member or someone working in the Paketo organization was to write up, I don't know, some sort of like post that was high level concepts of understanding build packs in such a way to facilitate and jumpstart the authoring process. Is there a way that like we could, you know, post that and then also, you know, hand it to the CNB project so that it's like still evident that it was like a contribution that we came with in a vendor neutral way that is helpful towards, you know, your project as well? I mean,
yeah,
I guess that's
Sorry.
I guess that's the point, that we're trying to figure out if there's a way to do that.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little confused about the like the linking thing and all that, because we're both projects under the CN well, no, we're in different locations, aren't we? You're in CN, we're in Cloud Foundry, and you're in a different org. Is that kind of the deal, or?
Like why we don't directly link to a bunch of Paketo stuff.
Or Google has implementations like, versus the registry is like not super, like you got to be looking for something, right? Versus
Yeah.
like these are a bunch of folks that are building organizations building build packs, right? I guess is
Yeah. And I can't give you the full story on exactly to my understanding, the reason was other people were writing their own build packs and we didn't want to seem biased, right?
Got it.
I think that probably the utility of just having those links now is just like far outweighs that downside, right? There's other people that we could probably link to as well if they get upset. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
All right, so we'll continue this conversation in the future, like cross-project education. Any other last-minute items to bring forward before we close? Okay, in which case, thank you everyone for coming, and see you back here next week.